I am Doreen. I play Doreen, who is the master servant and sort of like the character that the audience relates to the most, because I guess the way our director put it was that the audience sees the show through my eyes, and they're my biggest ally. So
she's the voice of reason, and so young too.
I'm a senior in high school. So
Hi, I'm Dave DeChristopher, and I play Orgo in The Master of the House. The play is Tartuffe by Moliere, translated by Richard Wilbur, and directed by Matthew Bretzinger.
So
what's on the paper, Sarah?
So I have some questions to ask you about just different experiences you've had and some opinions you have, maybe. I don't know if they count as opinions, but it's okay. Okay, so let's throw it back to the beginning. So what was your first exposure to live theater?
Wow, I'm old and don't have a clear memory, but I do remember.
I thought you were like 29.
Like when I was young, I was one of those kids. When I was a kid, The Wizard of Oz played every year the same day. We'd always act out the show the next day, all the people in the neighborhood. That was sort of my thing. Mm-hmm. And my parents were both frustrated actors, and I was the first grandchild on both sides of the family. So I got more encouragement than I ever could have. But I don't have that seminal see this show in the theater and go, oh, I want to do that. I just always really wanted to. Starting with television, I was one of those kids who was raised on TV, and all the sitcoms were like little plays. Like the Dick Van Dyke Show was really like a play with the audience watching and laughing, and that was really how it started. And then I would see everything I could see in Toledo.
That's awesome. Okay, so then later in your life, I guess you ended up in New York City. So how did that happen?
That's the worst story. So I was in Toledo, and I was cobbling together a very modest living by teaching at the Children's Theater Workshop, which at that time was in Sylvania at the Burnham Building. Mm-hmm. And there was a club in Maumee called Friar Tuck's, where they did musical reviews, and I did that and got paid, but it was pretty marginal. So a couple years after I graduated from college, my university started a summer theater. And I went there to do the summer theater, and I had some roles in the shows. And I was sitting on the porch after the show one night with this girl whose name was Ginny. She was from the South, and her name was Ginny Crutch, and she was like, I want to go to New York because my boyfriend Terry is going.
Oh,
she had this mad crush on this boy. And she said, but I don't even have anybody to go with. And I was like, I'll go with you. So that was how the entire thing was born.
Were you in love with her?
No. She was in love with him, and he turned out to be gay, and they got married, and it was horrible, and that's New York. But that was how it happened, that sort of randomly. And I guess, seriously, I was really ready to go, because I mean, you know how it is. I'm sure after you graduate from high school, you'll be very restless to do other things. That's what it was. I was sort of here. I did everything I could do. It was just like something new. So that's what it was. And it was like we made every mistake in the world. Like trying to get an apartment, we had like a map from the bank with one of those maps with like a sheaf of wheat and a cow to show all the parts on the map in the state. So we were just like, we're looking for an apartment, and that was how it started.
Can I get an apartment in the cow?
That's it.
Can I live in the cow? Okay. All right. So I guess now I'm going to ask you a little bit just about like your acting experience in general. So what's the hardest role you've ever had to perform, and why?
I think that goes in two ways. I think one thing is just I always feel like if you are not really right for the role, that makes it hard, and you're going uphill all the time. Mm-hmm. And that I have found with musicals, because I mostly started in musical theater and I have like a leading man voice, a singing voice, but not obviously the leading man demeanor. So I'd get cast in things like the lead in Guys and Dolls, Sky Masterson, who's like utterly cool, and I'm really more of a character actor. So fighting against that is really hard, and that's been hard. The other thing that makes something hard really is just a situation that is hard. The last show that I did before I moved back to Toledo was this big revival of a musical called Fiorello, and it starred Tony LoBianco, who thought of himself as a star, but he really was he's like the eighth guy in the line and character actor in movies. He's done a lot, and he was playing Fiorello. And it was one of those situations. It was just like every bad thing you hear about about theater. If you see movies where theater is disgusting, you'd like go and new people would be fired that day. There'd be a new director. I got cast in one role, and then I showed up and they said, no, you're in the ensemble, you don't have a role. then the person didn't show up, and so that was probably the worst. Which sort of taking a circle on that, when the process, like the process for us in Tartuffe, is so smooth and the director is nurturing and has a real collaborative spirit, everything is really wonderful.
Yeah.
But it isn't always that way professionally. A lot of times it is, but that's when it's hard.
And
yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Has there been any character where you didn't feel like you were right for the role and you were fighting uphill?
Sure. That was one I mentioned before, Sky Masterson. I also played the father once in I Ought to Be in Pictures. And the play is about this guy who leaves his family, and the girl comes back 20 years later and wants to have a relationship with him. And I guess when the play was written, that was not so verboten. But every time I read the play, I was like, I just can't do it. I can say the lines, but I don't. He has this long speech, and then they make up, but it's so, I just could not really latch on to that, and it was hard to do.
That makes sense. So what are some of the big, well, you kind of answered that, but if there are any more, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in your acting career?
Unfortunately, I think the biggest thing is keeping your focus. I mean, because you can be so easily distracted. And making a living is incredibly hard in the theater. If you're really a stage actor, it's incredibly difficult. So, and you have so much to give. The challenge, I think, is staying on the path and staying engaged. A lot of my friends in New York would get some survival job, and they would suddenly be like the king of the office temps, or the king of the telephone solicitors, or any little validation of what you're doing would pull you away. So I think the challenge is maintaining the focus and really wanted to do that. Not in a weird, I must be the best ever, but just staying in it. Yeah. And rejection, of course. It's all about rejection, everything you do, which you should not take personally, but you do.
Right.
So.
Has there ever been a rejection that you really, really struggled with?
Yes. No, it's hard because you want to give, you want to be 100% there. They always tell you it's not personal, but when for theater, when you're pouring your heart out in an audition, and then it's like, you suck, how can you deal with that? So it's the more you want it. There's this great not agent. She's a casting director, Karen Kaiser, and her phrase always was, "The audition is the job, and the perk is the work." She's like, okay. So going for the auditions and just giving, which is actually how I got this. Because I have not been auditioning because of being equity in a union, people wouldn't use me. But so what I've started to do is just go to auditions for the fun of auditioning and having that experience.
Wow, so you just came for fun?
I didn't think the rep would go for it.
Wow.
Because it's they don't use professional people. But Matthew felt like he felt like it was a big benefit because of for a lot of reasons. The complicatedness of the play, the elaborateness of the language, the period. Yeah. So that's the way he pitched it to the board, that I would sort of be supportive of everybody and raise all boats.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have, but that was...
No, I agree. I agree. I know I picked stuff up from you.
Stop.
Okay. So what is the most fun role you've ever played in?
Oh, it's so embarrassing to say. So I did this play in New York called Lennon's Breakdown, and it was an avant-garde play in which Lennon goes to psychiatrist. And I played the psychiatrist. But what I loved about it was I got to wear my own clothes. I walked into the space. I had a big swivel chair. So I'm sitting there swiveling and listening. I never got out of the friggin' chair. I had a little clipboard. I'm responding. It was so so comfortable to do. And I really loved that because it was no frills, because there was not, we do warm-ups here and you get all in the headspace and all the preparation. I love that because I would just walk in and be a listener, like the audience, for the play. That, and I also love Samterland Diaries, which I did at the Valentine for 3 years, because that was a one-person show, and David Sedaris, who wrote it, is just so bad. He's so mischievous, and he makes fun of Christmas and all that stuff. Bad. So those two, I would say.
That's awesome. So, like you were saying about kind of getting in the headspace, so can you tell us a little bit about your process in preparing for a role that does have so many frills like this?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do is to be open. It's a weird thing to say. You want to have some preparedness. You want to have some ideas about what your role is. But after that, because theater is so collaborative, the most important thing is to listen to the director, and even more, what people don't do so much is listen to the other actors.
Yeah.
What you're getting from them. My process is all based on offers in terms of what in the scene I'm getting from the other actors. So it's coming in with some idea, and then having the idea be developed and shaped by working with the actors and the director, which you have to trust the director a lot, which can be hard, but that's really the whole basis of it, I think, for me. And you may notice when I come to the theater, one of the things I love about acting is you're out of your life. And so I'm not one of the ones that hangs out in the, I'm not dissing this, which is I love for the time I'm in the theater to just be about the play.
Yeah.
So all I do is read the friggin' script over and over and over and over and over and think about it, and don't let any outside things in my life come in. It's such a pleasure to come and really get to play and do that, and have it just be about Tartuffe.
Yeah.
Before you have to go back to your, complicated, weird life.
True.
Like you had a paper due this week, and you were like, I'm going to do the play.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. I had an essay due like Friday, so no, that's all. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten from another actor? Either like as a director, what's something that someone that, or I guess in any case, something that you didn't expect to learn from somebody, but then they taught you?
The two things I would say is you have to develop a mindset about the whole acting thing that works for you. Mm-hmm. I saw this special on PBS once, and they were talking to actors, and this one woman who was very successful, like in her 20s, was like, you have to get up every day and read the trades and go to your classes. And then they had Cherry Jones, who's won the Tony twice. And she said something like, if you show up on time and you know your lines and you seem like a nice person and you understand the play, they'll have you back. So I think you want to think of it as a marathon, not as a sprint. Because a lot of people that I knew in their 20s, all they did was theater, and then they're 27 and they're like, I don't know anything but theater. I'm really bored. What am I doing? And then they get other careers. So the one is finding out the headspace for you to make it be a marathon. And the other one is you should be a student of the world. I think people need to have technique and learn about mime and movement and stuff. But like this play, doing the play, we learn about verse drama and also about the history of France and social customs. So it behooves you to be a well-rounded, interested, involved person. Because when you're on stage, people say you're playing a character that it's really you.
Yeah.
And how much of a well-rounded person you are and how much you're exposing, because I think acting is exposing, it's not hiding in a character. That really shows.
Right.
So a person that's engaged and interested and, and you would like maybe go out for coffee with after the show and all that stuff. That's what you want to be. And then you make your peace with acting and want to do it for a long time. Mm-hmm. Not be a shooting star.
Okay.
Are you going to go into theater in college?
I definitely continue to do it for the rest of my life, but according to my parents, hey mom and dad, it's not a stable career. So I'm going to go get, my parents and I kind of have a deal worked out. I'm going to go get a 4-year degree, go to college, get something stable, sort of like a safety net, and then if I decide,
Safety net.
Yes. If I decide or if an opportunity presents itself to continue and try and pursue it full time, then they're fully behind me and will support me and help me out as much as they can. So
be open to the opportunities then.
Oh yeah. That's why I'm trying to go to college in
a metropolitan area where there's theater?
Either Cincinnati, Cleveland, or Chicago.
Chicago and Cleveland.
Yeah. Cleveland, I love Case Western.
We have a ton of girls from Notre Dame where I teach who now have like real job careers in Chicago. There's a ceiling there because the best jobs only pay so much, but they work all the time. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's like honestly, that's what I hope to do someday. But
soon.
Yeah. So imagine this scenario. Get into your headspace. So you're standing behind somebody and it's opening night of a show and you're standing there and someone's standing in front of you and this is their first show. They've never performed it before. They're all in costume and they turn to you and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Help me. What's the one piece of advice you would give them?
What's the worst that can happen? That's what I would say.
Really?
It's so normal to be nervous because you want to be good. But what's the worst that can happen, really? That's sort of like, I have horrible stage fright, not for being on stage, just for life. So, but on stage, it's like, really, what's the worst that can happen? If I mess up, I messed up. Not that I want to, of course, but
Yeah.
so that's what I would say.
Wow.
Because it's all process, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about theater is it's live, so you see the different show every time you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I know, it's sort of not that impressive, but
No.
it's
That's
true.
That definitely. I like that. I like that a lot. That's the worst that could happen. Already asked you that. Oh, okay. So, Mr. DeChristopher here is also a playwright. So, where do you get your inspiration for that? That's such a basic question, but still, where do you get your inspiration for any script you've written?
Everything if they come from everywhere. And one of the real things is finding the time too.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. Writing is so insidious. You have to carve out the time to do stuff. I'm not like a writer on the fly. I was never a journaler. So that's really when I get an idea, I try to nurture it and make time to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really the answer.
What's your love child of writing? That's not the appropriate.
My favorite
term,
piece?
Yeah.
Well, I'm working something now, and what you find is your issues are the same ones. I'm really big on ageism, surprise, because I'm old and feel young and hate the way people are being so shepherded out. So I write a lot about that, and also stereotypes. I wrote a play last year, a full-length play for high school that we did at my school where I was directing Clay, which I liked, which was based on the myth of Circe, who was what's the word? Not witch, but sorceress, who turned people into pigs. So she was a high school student who turned all the jocks and people that were abusing her into pigs. It was like my revenge for being the outsider. Yeah.
Did you feel like an outsider in high school?
Of course. Everybody in theater, right?
Yeah, I got you.
It's like when you watch people being interviewed on TV, politicians and stuff. Why is the last question always, "Hey, you gonna root for those Bears?" How the Detroit? I always want them to go, "Hey, how about that Cleveland Opera? How they doing?" Wouldn't it be great if they talked about that or theater instead of sports?
Yeah. Such is the life.
Such is
the life. All right, so we know you've been a playwright. We know you've been a director. We know you've been an actor. Have you produced anything?
Yeah, for a short time I was producing. I had a company in New York, a theater and education, an arts and education. We don't even have arts and education here, but it's where you use theater as the learning engine for all subjects. And also, we were there to train young audiences. So we would limit every performance to 150 seats, and we were envelope mounted, which meant that before the show we'd talk to the kids, and afterwards we'd talk to them and say what they did that made the show more interesting for us and helped us. Mm-hmm. So I did that in upstate New York for about 6 years. And then when I moved back here, somebody had the very horrible idea of having a dinner theater at the Elks in Maumee, and I did that for about 6 months.
Wow.
And it didn't really work out because our space bordered the bar. It was like a little thin divided wall, and we could hear people in the bar like, rah, rah. And the people in the bar hated us because they had to be quiet for the shows.
Yeah.
But they were great shows.
Were they?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Learn something new. So, in doing all of that, what do you feel is the hardest aspect of theater? Is it producing, directing, acting, writing?
Everything is easy if people are collaborative. Now you're going around to questions.
No, it's fine.
It's really about the collaboration. I thought you were going in a different direction with the question, but I don't think anything's harder than the other. Everything can be hard or easy, depending on how you work with it. Mm-hmm. For me, it's all about doing all of them together too. Like if you have to act, and if I'm away from directing for a year or so, I get itchy. When I'm doing too much directing, I want to act. So that's what I would say. Producing, not so much.
So just kind of finding that balance?
Yeah, I think so.
That's awesome.
It's and how much do you learn about directing from acting?
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. This is the last question I have for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I'm
This
ready.
is a hard one. You ready? Is everybody ready? What's the best compliment you've ever received?
I don't know. That's a great question. I forgot I was watching a play.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's what we say about speech. Sarah's a speechy. And what they say about a good speech performance is, I forgot I was watching a performance. I really felt like I was in the literature. Mm-hmm. I think that's true, too, about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock on.
What we do is really fun.
Yeah.
And it's live. People should come to see it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things
Audiences are
about
roaring.
Tartuffe I think is so wonderful. I think people make a mistake when they try to pick commercial plays, because all they're really doing is replicating television and movies.
Yeah.
But plays like Tartuffe are things you would never see except in theater, and that's what makes it valuable.
Right.
I think. For what it's worth. Good talking to you, Sarah.
Good talking to you too. Okay, we only did one, but okay.
It's okay. You can do that.
Will you do it with me?
Yeah.
Ready? Come see Tartuffe.